expected.
How many?
About 2,600.
Damn. Should be live now. I should.
I was thinking I would love to put together a survey about fat and sexuality at some point, but I would really love to sit down and talk with Hunter about their process for coming up with the questions for the fat census.
Yeah. Oh no. You can tell I'm tired. I messed up the title. I don't know who is watching this already. Alright, I guess I'm live. I mean, I have been for like a minute. So, alright, that was the last game I played. Those guys accidentally became America and started using doomsday weapons. Let's see. I'm gonna do human because I'm boring. Let's see. Are they gonna be from Earth? Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll just play as the UN. See if I can change their background to something a little more interesting. No, that's silly. I'm not gonna play as the UN. Why would I ever want to do that? Hey, hon, what's a good name for a planet?
The best name for a planet is probably Kevin. It's the best name I've heard. No, I'm kidding. Don't name it Kevin. That would just be born under a bad sign. Like, let me tell you, it's never worked for me. Name it... No, not any of that. No. No.
What?
Its name is Gluetown.
How do you spell that?
Just like it sounds, David. I would do 2 words, but sure. And
Cool.
really, just all capitals, but 2 words.
Ah, that feels a little silly. Doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess you wouldn't want any of the reboot people trapped in your video game to think you're silly.
Yeah.
You want them to take you seriously.
I'm gonna try to give them a good life.
Okay, name it Reboot. Name it, Reboot Town.
What's the name of the city in Reboot?
I forgot. I'm not looking at your chat. I guess I should.
Oh, I should be too.
Open in the YouTube app and turn down that volume.
Names always trip me up.
Name the planet he, him. I put it in your chat. The planet will be a trans man married to the sea.
What? Okay, then what is the star named?
I don't fucking know, dude. You get to name the star, too?
Yeah.
Is this like one of those name a star for a birthday present things?
No, you just get to decide what your own star is called.
Oh. Madonna.
Madonna.
Yeah, it's a biblical reference.
Okay, so let's go with something utopian.
Oh, a utopian name?
Yeah.
Okay, the utopian name is 42069 Weed City.
No, I'm just gonna do.
Why are you even
City.
asking me? 42069 Weed City is a fucking great sci-fi name. It has numbers. You can put an X in there for no reason if you want to. Weed City X. 42069 Weed City X. The best planet name I've ever come up with. Honestly insulted that you're not using that. I'll be back in a second.
Did I spell autonomous right? Yeah. Very boring. Turn up the hyperlane density, maybe not that much. No, maybe it might be good if it's just wormholes. Let's go big. Just a big empty galaxy. All right. I don't know how well anyone can hear me. This was pretty haphazard, setting this up. I have no plans. Let's just go with something a little more optimistic than real life. I mean, it seems like Biden will get to be president, and that is one of the better scenarios. So, you know, there's that, I guess. Weird day. Oh. I often enjoy this game with mods, but they're about to update it, and it loads much faster if I don't use them. Well, I mean, 2,800 stars is a massive galaxy. It's very expansive, makes it feel like space, but it also takes a long time to generate, and you need to include name lists extenders, otherwise half of the stars will not have names. Not half, but, well, no, about half if you have that many. Always need more monies. Right.
Democracy sure is an endless struggle. Construction complete. Construction complete. Construction complete.
I chose the wrong option. I should have chosen Discovery.
The TV show?
No, the tradition.
Oh.
Oh, well, I could do it now. There we go. These people seem to generate a lot of unity. Must be nice.
Yeah, I don't do any of that shit. If you're not fat, too bad. No, I still love you. I forgive you for being thin, David.
Thank you. It wasn't by choice.
I mostly forgive you for being thin.
Did that make it worse?
Yeah.
Oh.
It's okay. I love you. Despite your physical flaws.
I love you.
Sorry, everyone. I vacillate wildly between, like, fat positivity and fat supremacy.
Stellaris. It's like that.
Tell us about Stellaris, David. What's it like?
Right now, this civilization is confined to a single planet, mostly doing research. They have a deep space vessel, but they haven't sent it anywhere. And are instead using it to make their research go a little faster.
Fascinating.
The governor is now an intellectual.
Well, can you relate that to Mbembe's work that I was reading to you earlier? That would probably make me more interested in it, I'm not gonna lie. Can you make it more like an academic paper? Video games? Video games as viewed through a fucking interesting lens. I'm much more interested there.
I mean, it's not totally feasible to avoid necropolitics in Stellaris. For example, you can set rights based on species. Now, I have designed a government incapable of evil, hopefully. So they cannot enslave or purge
Y'all,
anyone.
my anarchist eyebrows just crawled so far up my forehead when he said that.
I said hopefully.
Yeah. No, you communists always are hopeful about that.
I am in a
Go on, let's see how it works out.
Well, the last one turned out to be America and blew up 107 planets.
Mm-hmm. How'd that go for you, August?
Not bad. I mean, they were ascendant for a long time. They blew up 107 planets.
That's bad.
Oh, yeah.
So when you say not bad, what you mean is actually, like, pretty bad. By not bad, you mean, like, still reasonably bad.
Well, now I already have the achievement for blowing up planets, so there's no reason to in this game. And once you've blown up one planet, I mean, there's no going back. You are now a planet blowing up civilization.
I feel like Mbembe would have things to say about this.
Yeah, like what?
Like, that's pretty fucked up, dude.
Yeah, it is. Alright, I'm gonna send the Galileo now.
Yeah, it's not nearly gay enough for a name. That's not gay. I mean, that's bisexual, close enough.
The UNS Freddie Mercury to explore the Gahur system. It's the first system this colony has explored, other than the one they live in.
That's exciting. Though, sort of a missed opportunity to not make a David Bowie reference.
What do you mean?
Because Space Oddity.
Fair.
And Ziggy Stardust.
The Freddie Mercury has discovered artifacts from an ancient alien civilization.
Well, you know, he's a multifaceted man.
That's the name of the ship. It's in honor of Freddie Mercury.
I like that you were about to call him Frederick Mercury.
The scientist on board is named Ethan, and he has a top bun. I'm sure he's awful. He appears to be Caucasian.
Yeah, but, you know, he'd have to at least be queer to be on the Freddie Mercury.
It's true.
You have to be at least this gay to ride Freddie Mercury.
Well, they've discovered a basically uninhabitable planet.
Send the Straits there.
The scientific community wants to know if we want to scan all the available habitable planets for science. Efforts to catalog the life forms we encounter are already underway, but our xenobiologists have urged us to focus on planetary survey efforts. Sure. I'm gonna survey those anyway. Yeah, I guess one of those. Research speed. Yeah, since I'm not using any mods here, I'm using the UN name list, which is problematic. I've sent the UNS Freddie Mercury to investigate some unexplained interference patterns. And then some signs of ancient alien activity.
I support that.
Freddie Mercury reports that the signal is a song.
Oh.
A complex sonification of advanced mathematical equations, to be precise, and one that the chief science officer cannot seem to get out of their head. Who or what may have composed this song remains unknown, although its complexity infers an incredible level of technological sophistication.
Well done.
It's a song.
You found Bohemian Rhapsody.
I should have changed the thing at the beginning of the ship names. I always forget that. It's still UNS as if it were the UN, but you know, it doesn't matter.
Construction complete.
I should have just played the UN. There, now it's a little less weird.
Construction complete.
Gonna just double my naval capacity. Yep, sounds good. It's gonna I have commissioned a third scientific vessel.
What did you name it?
The George Michael.
I accept that. Are you gonna make a Howard Ashman next?
Yeah, perfect. I wasn't sure what would come next. Eventually, I was gonna have to land on Simon Ferocious.
Howard Ashman is the Disney composer who was gay and died of AIDS-related complications.
Alright.
Hello, Wiggins. We love you. You're a good cat. I mean, sometimes.
Well, I have a mystery to solve.
What's the mystery?
There is an ancient alien trading post to be investigated.
Send Giorgio.
I haven't named anyone that.
Okay.
Should I send the Freddie Mercury, the David Bowie, or the George Michael?
For an alien trading post?
Yeah.
I feel like George Michael wouldn't have fun at a trading post because he's never gonna dance again.
Alright.
Who were the other two?
David Bowie and Freddie Mercury.
Right. You didn't name one of them the Major Tom, so the David Bowie will probably make it without crashing.
Alright, the David Bowie is currently assisting research at the Capitol.
It's important work.
And the Freddie Mercury is on site, but has orders to survey a nearby system.
Oh, that seems inefficient.
Why?
If they're already there, why not? I don't know. Whatever.
Alright, I'll make them do it.
I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty feet ain't got no rhythm.
Well, I'm gonna have the
That song's a jam, honestly.
David Bowie survey the system.
Them fucking saxophone. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's a great song. UNS BTS.
BTS.
K-pop is big, dude.
K-pop is construction. That's the theme.
I don't know. Sure, why not?
They don't have anything to do right now.
Except for rule the world, I guess. K-pop is what's popular.
The David Bowie has discovered a small object in a rapid orbit around a star.
Is it Major Tom?
Should they investigate? It's
Yeah.
a challenging mystery.
Yeah,
Alright.
that might be Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Your circuit's dead. There's something wrong.
Sorry, they factionalized the citizens.
Okay.
The captain of the David Bowie founded the Union of Traditionalist Values.
That doesn't sound like David Bowie.
Some fucking scientist guy wants to protect aliens, which, fine, that's in the Constitution. And the captain of the Freddie Mercury has founded the Free Thought Council.
Sure, why not?
Okay, so in honor of your apparent conservatism, I am going to rename the David Bowie the Simon Ferocious.
Never gonna dance again. Guilty feet ain't got no rhythm.
Oh. My physicists aren't doing any physics. You can see how that's a problem, right?
I guess if you're a capitalist, no, I'm kidding.
Technology discovered. Survey complete.
It has been 11 years since this game started.
I feel guilty for bragging. But I'm trying to learn to be nice to myself.
You should be nice to yourself.
You should not tell me what to do. Okay. I never made a chicken patty.
The captain of the Simon Ferocious says there's a strange object in orbit of this star, and they would like to investigate.
Well, I hope it's not Major Tom. We just got rid of David Bowie. Simon Ferocious can't carry that tune.
They say they're detecting a ceramic container.
Oh, it is Major Tom. That's terrible.
I will build another science ship.
Go.
This will be the new UNS David Bowie. Captained by Jason.
Well, everybody's talking about what anarchists are, and I just read that really good passage in Necropolitics that I think explained it really well.
Oh, yeah.
I should just read that.
You should.
I don't think there's anybody here. I should tweet that I'm gonna read that. Let me find it. Okay, I'll tweet that I'm going to first.
Survey
The David Bowie has discovered an extremely rare aerosol of exotic particles. If ingested by psionically gifted individuals, this aerosol should act as a very potent and potentially addictive drug.
Oh. Sick. I'm gonna wait and see if anyone drops in, and then I might read some necropolitics aloud. I don't know. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, Stellaris is not terribly interesting on its own, to be honest.
Construction complete.
Construction is complete.
Okay. I don't know if anyone's interested in hearing this, but I think it's very interesting, so maybe I will read it aloud. I think Necropolitics is a pretty cool book.
It is. I tell people to read it all the time.
Or essay, or whatever the hell it is.
The Simon Ferocious has discovered a fourth dimensional object.
Well, that seems unlikely, but okay.
It's very unlikely.
Anyway, let's read Necropolitics, since everyone's talking about, like, what anarchism means, because I think Mbembe has, like, a very, I hope I'm saying his name right, has a very, solid definition in here. But I'm going to read this whole bit, because you really need context to understand him. He kind of, intentionally writes in this very conversational way. Talks about it in the introduction. But this is from location 478 under the header Mythologies. The critique of the violence of democracies is not new. It can be directly read in the counter-discourses and practices of struggle that accompany both its emergence and then its triumph in the 19th century. Take, for example, the diverse variants of socialism, that other new idea of the 19th century, or again the anarchism of the late 19th century and the traditions of revolutionary unionism in France before the First World War and in the wake of the 1929 crisis. One of the fundamental questions that arose around that time was to know whether politics could be something other than a state-related activity, one in which the state is utilized to guarantee the privileges of a minority. The other was to know under which conditions the radical forces aiming to precipitate the advent of the future society could invoke a right to use violence to ensure the realization of their utopias. On the philosophical level, the question was one of how humanity could develop, and without any recourse to transcendence, its capacities and increase its power of acting as the only way for human history to produce itself. Toward the end of the 19th century, the notion of direct action made its appearance. Direct action was conceived as a violent action performed independently of state mediation. Its aim was to get free of the constraints that prevent humans from communicating with their own reserves of energy and, doing so, to self-engender. The consummate example here is revolution, a way of violently eliminating every objective counterforce that stands opposed to changing society's foundations. Revolution aims at the abolition of class antagonisms and the advent of an egalitarian society. Another example is the expropriating general strike, the aim of which is to establish another mode of production. This sort of mediation-free conflict prescribes by definition all compromise. In addition, it refuses all reconciliation. Revolution is thought of as a violent event. This violence is planned. On the occasion of revolutionary events, this violence may target persons who embody the order about to be overturned. Although inevitable, It must be checked by turning against structures and institutions. Revolutionary violence indeed has something irreducible about it. It aims at the destruction and elimination of an established order, an elimination that cannot occur peacefully. It assails the order of things rather than that of persons. Anarchism, under its different figures, presents itself as a surpassing notably of parliamentary democracy. The main anarchist currents strove to think through the political beyond bourgeois domination. Their project was to be done with all political domination, parliamentary democracy being one of its modalities. For Mikhail Bakunin, I hope I'm saying that right, for example, surpassing bourgeois democracy happens by surpassing the state, that institution whose specificity is to aim at its own preservation, as well as that of the classes that, having monopolized the state, proceed to colonize it. Surpassing the state inaugurates the advent of the commune, which, more than a simple economic or political entity, is the figure par excellence of self-management of the social. The other criticism of brutality of democracies is the work of revolutionary trade unionists, for whom at issue is not so much to weigh upon the existing system as to destroy it through violence. Violence differentiates itself from force. The object of force, writes George Sorel, is to impose certain social order in which the minority governs. It seeks to bring about an automatic obedience. Violence, by contrast, tends to the destruction of that order and to smashing that authority. From 1919 to the start of the 1930s in France, manifold worker demonstrations aimed expressly at this goal. Most of them ended in deaths, street occupations, and the building of barricades. The cycle of provocation, repression, mobilization contributed to the asserting of class identity, along with lengthy strike movements and recurrent clashes with the forces of order. The idea here was that proletarian violence maintained a moral superiority over the reactionary violence of the state apparatus. Nearly 2 decades after the Commune's repression and the First International's dissolution in 1876, anarchism spread quickly in France. Its declared objectives were to destroy property and expropriate owners, and the terror borne by the oppressed was one of its weapons. In the 1890s, this terror was about performing feats of daring as part of an economy of sacrifice for the proletarian cause. These critiques of democracy, articulated from the viewpoint of the social classes that originally endured democracy's brutality in the West itself, are relatively well known. What has not been emphasized enough, however, are its multiple genealogies and their entanglement. The history of modern democracies gets painted as though it reduces to a history internal to Western societies, as if, closed in on themselves and closed to the world, these societies confine themselves to the narrow limits of their immediate environment. Well, never has this been the case. The triumph of modern democracy in the West coincides with the period of its history during which this region of the world was engaged in a twofold movement of internal consolidation and expansion across the seas. The history of modern democracy is, at bottom, a history with 2 faces and even 2 bodies. The solar body, on the one hand, and the nocturnal body on the other. The major emblems of this nocturnal body are the colonial empire and the pro-slavery state, and more precisely, the plantation and the penal colony. The penal colony in particular is a place where sentences of exclusion are served. These sentences aim to remove and eliminate those subjected to them. At the origin of the penal colony, these sentences were given to political opponents, common law convicts subject to forced labor, and even recidivist delinquents. In France, the law of August 26, 1792, de facto instituted political deportation. Between 1852 and 1854, colonial penal colonies underwent rapid expansion. Mass deportations took place throughout the 19th century, notably in Guyana, where sometimes light prison sentences were transformed into lifelong sentences. In several regards, the colonial penal colony prefigures the mass imprisonment typical of the contemporary era, that of extreme and generalized coercion and solitary confinement. The violent treatment of prisoners and the forms of privation imposed on them mix two rationales, one of neutralization and one of exile. To dissimulate the contingency of its foundations and the violence constituting its hidden aspects, modern democracy needed, at its inception, to envelop itself in a quasi-mythological structure. As we have just seen, the orders of democracy, the plantation, and colonialism have long maintained relations of twinship. These relations were far from being accidental. Democracy, the plantation, and the colonial empire are objectively all part of the same historical matrix. This originary and structuring fact lies at the heart of every historical understanding of the violence of the contemporary global order. For a proper understanding of the nature of the relations between, on the one hand, the democratic order and, on the other hand, the colonial imperial order, and the way in which this relation determines the violence of democracies, several factors must be considered, factors of a political, technological, demographic, epidemiological, and even botanical nature. The most decisive of all the technological tools that contributed to shaping colonial empires from the 18th century were probably weapons technologies, medicines, and means of locomotion. Sorry, I'm babbling now. I really, really love this book. It's really good. But yeah, there's some stuff about anarchism and how it differentiates from other movements, and how revolutionary violence differentiates from state violence in there, and yeah, you should read it. It's good. Not you, David. I meant anyone who's in chat who's probably not there.
I could stand to reread it. I should probably read that book every year.
It's good.
Not always easy to parse, I feel like.
Like I said, it's very conversational. I actually do find reading it aloud is more helpful for parsing it than reading it silently. Does that make sense? You find a certain almost stage rhythm when you're reading it aloud that kind of helps you understand what's being said a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like his take on basically how the pro-slavery state leads towards the eventual decomposition of freedom for all subjects. I think that's kind of like the inevitability of fascism under colonialism, and how those two things are completely related as like a kind of sovereignty over death.
Yeah. I wish I were like smarter at the moment.
I think you're very smart. I'm sorry.
No, I just can't quite think of the right thing to say.
You're not required to say anything. It's okay. Sorry, I was babbling.
You're not babbling. I feel like, understanding the necropolitics of society is really, that's fundamental to how fascists operate.
Well, like, I see it this way. Like, Marx brought us this understanding of, like, the class hierarchy. But Foucault brought us this...
dozens of unnamed people.
Right, like, right. And then Foucault kind of, like, expanded that understanding into, like, how the biopolitical works as, like, this sort of disciplinary force for capitalist markets, for, like, the market and, like, the corporatist America and corporatist West. And then... But what's interesting is that Mbembe really takes it to, like, this next level, and we can see that, like, it's not just that people are seeing stuff that's always there, it's that our society is getting worse.
Yeah.
Like, these things were always there, but also, like, it's getting worse faster. Like, slavery hasn't gone away. It's just mutated to remain acceptable through, like,
Private prisons.
through private prisons. And, you know, Jim Crow didn't go away. It just, you know, morphed itself into gentrification and white flight.
Redlining.
Redlining, gentrification, and white flight, I would say. And, you know, the school to prison pipeline. And then you have, like, you know, colonization never went away. Like, indigenous people are still on reservations, kind of things. Like, so I think that, like, Mbembe really does this really interesting job of showing how, like, the same, like, bigotry exists, but it's had to, like, mutate into this, like, necropolitical ideology in order to justify itself. And it just keeps re-justifying itself.
Yeah.
But of course, how could it not justify itself when the system itself creates the terms of justification, you know? I don't know, is anyone in chat? What do you think? Should I read more? David's like, no.
No, I think you should.
Because you don't know what to say.
Yes. And also, I should go.
You're gonna just leave? Okay.
No, I'm gonna grab a snack.
Oh. What are you gonna grab? Gummy?
Maybe.
Okay. I think this part is really interesting. This is from location 555. Also during this time, democracies strove as hard as they could to transfer the industrial principles of mass production onto the art of warfare and into the service of mass destruction. So, mass production onto the art of warfare and into the service of mass destruction. Thanks to the new industrial weapons, some of which were tried out during the American War of Secession, 1861-65, and during the Russo-Japanese conflict of 1904 to 1905, the idea was to increase the firepower tenfold against the backdrop of a more or less fatalist acceptance of death and submission to technology. From this viewpoint, colonial conquest constituted a privileged field of experimentation. They gave rise to a thinking about power and technology that, taken to its ultimate consequences, paved the way for concentration camps and modern genocidal tendencies. Colonial conquest witnessed an acceleration of the confrontation between human and machine, itself the premise for industrial war, and the butcheries emblematized by the 1914-18 war. Also on the occasion of colonial conquests, a habituation was cultivated to higher human losses, notably among enemy troops. Moreover, the wars of conquest were asymmetrical wars from start to finish. Throughout 1.5 centuries of colonial warfare, colonial armies lost few men. Historians estimate the losses between 280,000 and 300,000, relatively low figures if we consider that close to 250,000 died during the Crimean War alone. During the three main dirty wars of decolonization, Indochina, Algeria, Angola, and Mozambique, 75,000 deaths were recorded on the colonial side and 850 on the indigenous side. The tradition of dirty wars originates in these colonial conflicts. They generally end in a massive wiping out of the native populations and in deep mutations of the pathological ecology of the thus devastated regions.
Led by regimes that appeal to rights, most colonial wars, notably at the moment of conquest, properly speaking, are not wars of self-defense. They are not undertaken with the aim of recuperating one's goods or bringing justice wherever it is flouted. To begin with, no offense has been committed whose seriousness can be objectively gauged. These wars give rise to a violence that obeys no rule of proportionality. Practically no formal limit exists to the devastation that strikes entities declared to be enemies. Many innocent people are killed not because of errors they had committed, but instead for yet to be committed errors. The war of conquest is thus not about upholding the law. If it criminalizes the enemy, the aim is not to apply justice. Whether or not he bears arms, the enemy to be punished is an intrinsic enemy, an enemy by nature. In short, colonial conquest paves the way to a sphere of unregulated war, to war outside the law, led by some democracy, which in so doing externalizes violence to a third place, ruled by non-normative conventions and customs. Or as the kids call it, the war in Afghanistan. Paradoxically, this sphere of war outside the law flourished just as many efforts to transform both jus and bello, I don't know how to say Latin shit, right in the conduct of war, and jus ad bellum, the right to wage war, took place in the West. Begun in